They called him Three-Finger Brown. He hated that name. But the nickname stuck because of an industrial accident that took his thumb and forefinger, a deformity that became his signature. For 44 years, Tommy Lucchese lived as a mobster without ever spending significant time behind bars. He killed 30 men. He controlled the garment district. He corrupted judges, mayors, and prosecutors. And when he died in 1967 from a brain tumor, over 1,000 people attended his funeral, including FBI agents taking notes. He was 5'2", but he cast a shadow that stretched across New York for 4 decades. December 1st, 1899, Palermo, Sicily. In a city where poverty was passed down like a family curse and survival was the only industry, Gaetano Lucchese was born to Baldassare and Francesca Lucchese, a working-class couple struggling to feed their children. The surname Lucchese suggests family origins from Lucca, a small Sicilian town. But by the time Gaetano was born, his family had settled in Palermo, a port city controlled by the mafia, where young boys learned early that respect was earned through violence or starved out through weakness. Young Gaetano grew up watching his father work himself to the bone for pennies. He watched his mother scrub floors. He watched Sicily chew up families like his and spit out nothing but corpses and criminals. And in 1911, when Gaetano was just 12 years old, his family made a decision. We're going to America. They emigrated to the United States and settled in Manhattan's East Harlem, a cramped, dirty neighborhood where Italian immigrants squeezed into tenement buildings that smelled like sewage and broken dreams. The family first lived at 213 East 106th Street, then moved to 316 East 118th Street, both in the heart of Italian East Harlem. Gaetano's father took a job hauling cement. It was backbreaking work, but it was work. Young Gaetano, now called Thomas's or Tommy, dropped out of school and took a job in a machine shop. He was small, just 5'2" with a slight build, but he was scrappy, smart, and ambitious. And then, in 1915, everything changed. While working in the machine shop, Tommy Lucchese suffered an industrial accident. A machine crushed his right hand, severing his thumb and forefinger. The injury left him with only 3 functional fingers on his right hand. And years later, when he was arrested, a police officer noticed the deformity and compared it to Mordecai Three-Finger Brown, a famous Chicago Cubs pitcher who also had a mangled hand. The officer nicknamed him Three-Finger Brown. Tommy Lucchese hated that nickname, but it stuck. And for the rest of his life, newspapers, cops, and rivals called him by the name he despised. But if you called him that to his face, you didn't live long. After his accident, Tommy Lucchese spent more time on the streets. And in East Harlem, the streets belonged to gangs. He joined the 107th Street Gang, a criminal organization run by Kiro Terranova and aligned with boss Gaetano, Tommy Reyna. The gang specialized in burglaries, robberies, extortion, and murder. But Tommy Lucchese wasn't just another thug. He was an organizer. By age 18, Lucchese had started a window washing company in East Harlem. The business model was simple. Store owners paid Lucchese's crew to wash their windows. If they refused, their windows mysteriously got broken by vandals. And then, Lucchese's crew would return and offer to wash the windows. For a fee, of course. Protection racket disguised as a cleaning service. It was brilliant. And it taught Tommy Lucchese the most important lesson of his life. Violence is a tool, but extortion is a business. In the 1920s, Lucchese met a young gangster who would change his life forever, Charles "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano was charismatic, ambitious, and ruthless. He'd formed alliances with Jewish gangsters like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, and with Italian mobsters like Frank Costello and Vito Genovese. Together, they were building a criminal empire based on bootlegging, smuggling illegal alcohol during Prohibition. Lucchese joined them, and his rise through the ranks was meteoric. By the mid-1920s, Lucchese had become a top member of Gaetano Reyna's crime family, one of the most powerful mob organizations in New York. But Lucchese's criminal career wasn't without risk. During the 1920s, he was arrested 6 times. 1920, arrested in Riverhead, Long Island, for grand larceny after stealing a car. This was when he got his hated nickname. January 1921, convicted of auto theft and sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. August 1927, arrested under the alias Thomas Ara and charged with receiving stolen goods. July 1928, arrested along with his brother-in-law for the murder of Louis Sarasulo. Charges were later dropped. In March 1922, Lucchese was sent to Sing Sing Correctional Facility. He served 13 months before being paroled in 1923. It would be Tommy Lucchese's only conviction, ever. By the late 1920s, New York's underworld was at war. The Castellamarese War, a brutal power struggle between two mob bosses. Giuseppe, Joe the Boss, Masseria, and Salvatore Maranzano. Tommy Lucchese was aligned with Gaetano Reina, who nominally worked for Masseria. But in 1930, Reina secretly switched his allegiance to Maranzano, hoping to gain more power and better financial terms. Big mistake. When Masseria found out, he ordered Reina's execution. On February 26, 1930, Vito Genovese shot and killed Gaetano Reina. Masseria then appointed Joseph Pinzolo as the new boss of the Reina family. But Lucchese and his ally Tommy Galliano hated Pinzolo, so they formed a secret gang, including future informant Joe Valachi, Stefano Rondelli, and Dominic Petrilli. And on September 5, 1930, Joseph Pinzolo was shot to death in an office leased by Tommy Lucchese. The hit was clean, and Masseria never suspected Lucchese. But the war escalated. Lucky Luciano, one of Masseria's top lieutenants, secretly began negotiating with Maranzano. Luciano convinced Lucchese and Galliano to switch sides. On April 15, 1931, Luciano lured Masseria to a Coney Island restaurant. While they ate pasta and played cards, Luciano excused himself to the bathroom. Then the door burst open. Albert Anastasia, Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis, and Bugsy Siegel walked in and shot Masseria to death. Maranzano declared victory. He named himself boss of all bosses and restructured the New York Mafia into 5 families. Tommy Galliano became boss of the former Reina family. And Tommy Lucchese? He became underboss. But Maranzano's reign lasted just 5 months. In September 1931, Maranzano summoned Luciano, Genovese, and Costello to his office, planning to kill them. But Luciano found out first. On September 10, 1931, 4 Jewish hitmen, provided by Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, walked into Maranzano's office disguised as federal agents. Tommy Lucchese was already inside. Lucchese's job? Point out Maranzano to the hitmen. He did, and the hitmen stabbed and shot Maranzano to death. Tommy Lucchese had just helped orchestrate the assassination of the boss of all bosses. After Maranzano's death, Lucky Luciano created the Commission, a governing council of mob bosses designed to prevent future wars. The 5 families were formalized: Luciano family, later Genovese; Mangano family, later Gambino; Profaci family, later Colombo; Bonanno family, Galliano family, later Lucchese. Tommy Galliano became boss. Tommy Lucchese became underboss. And for the next 22 years, Lucchese loyally served Galliano while building his own power base. But Galliano was a recluse. He avoided public appearances. He didn't want attention. So Tommy Lucchese became the public face of the family. In 1946, when Luciano organized a summit of mob bosses in Havana, Cuba, Galliano didn't attend. He sent Tommy Lucchese instead. By the 1930s and 1940s, Lucchese had become the preeminent garment district racketeer in New York, partnering with Louis Lepke Buchalter, head of Murder Inc. Lucchese controlled the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, ILGWU. If you wanted to do business in New York's garment district, one of the largest industries in the city, you paid Tommy Lucchese. If you didn't, your factory got bombed, your workers went on strike, your shipments disappeared. Lucchese made millions. He also pioneered rackets at Idlewild Airport, later renamed JFK Airport, corrupting unions to facilitate trucking monopolies, warehouse theft, hijacking operations. Decades later, Martin Scorsese's film Goodfellas depicted the Lucchese family's airport operations. But Lucchese wasn't just a gangster, he was a politician. Tommy Lucchese understood something most gangsters didn't. Politicians are more valuable than hitmen. He cultivated relationships with judges, prosecutors, mayors, and police commissioners. And he used those relationships to protect his empire. Among his close friends, Armand Chenkalian, administrative assistant to the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York Miles Lane, U.S. Attorney Thomas Murphy, Assistant U.S. Attorney who prosecuted Alger Hiss and later became New York City Police Commissioner Vincent Impellitteri, Mayor of New York City Lucchese, was such a staunch supporter of Mayor Impellitteri that he was a frequent guest at Murphy's home. When Murphy was named police commissioner in 1950, he claimed total ignorance of Lucchese's criminal record. Sure he did. In 1945, Lucchese applied to the New York State Parole Board for a certificate of good conduct. Armand Chenkalian served as a character witness for him. A character witness for a mob boss from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Publicly, Lucchese insisted he was a legitimate businessman. In 1952, when questioned by authorities, he said, "I make $100,000 a year with my dress factories. I got 1,500 people working for me. I give them all the fringe benefits, plus turkeys twice a year. If a girl has a baby, I give her a carriage or $50. If it's twins, the parents get a car. Triplets, I build them a house." But nobody's had twins or triplets yet. It was a masterful performance, and many people believed him. On February 16, 1951, Tommy Galliano died of natural causes. He'd ruled the family quietly for 22 years, avoiding headlines, making money, staying alive. And with Galliano's death, Tommy Lucchese became boss. The family was renamed the Lucchese crime family. One of Lucchese's first moves as boss? Build an alliance with Carlo Gambino, then underboss of the Anastasia family. To cement the alliance, Lucchese arranged for his daughter Frances to marry Gambino's son, Tommy Gambino. The two families became partners, sharing rackets at JFK Airport and across New York. Lucchese was a modern gangster. He diversified his operations: gambling, loan sharking, labor racketeering, construction stuff trafficking. Though he kept his involvement quiet, he ruled through consensus, not terror. He avoided violence when possible. He was respected, not feared. But in the 1950s, the federal government came after him. In 1950, U.S. Senator Estes Kefauver launched televised hearings to investigate organized crime. Dozens of mobsters were called to testify. In September 1952, after a 10-day official search, federal agents finally located Tommy Lucchese at his home in Lido Beach, Long Island. Through his attorney, Lucchese agreed to appear. When questioned, Lucchese maintained he was a legitimate businessman. He denied being a mob boss. He insisted the mafia didn't exist. But Robert F. Kennedy later said that Lucchese provided a lot more information than other mobsters and called the exchange almost a pleasure. Of course, Lucchese didn't actually reveal anything important. He just knew how to charm prosecutors. In 1943, federal authorities had begun investigating Lucchese when he applied for U.S. citizenship. They discovered he'd left 2 murder charges off his naturalization application. The government tried to denaturalize him, strip his citizenship, for lying on the application. But in April 1958, the U.S. Supreme Court dismissed the charges against Lucchese, Frank Costello, and others. Tommy Lucchese had beaten the feds again. By the 1960s, Tommy Lucchese was suffering from heart disease. He'd undergone multiple surgeries, but he continued running the family. In 1966, Lucchese was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He underwent surgery, but never fully recovered. On July 13, 1967, at his estate in Lido Beach, Long Island, Tommy Lucchese died in his own bed. He was 67 years old. Over 1,000 people attended his funeral. Judges, politicians, businessmen, and mob bosses, Carlo Gambino, Agnello Neil Della Croce, and others, showed up to pay their respects, knowing full well that FBI agents were watching and taking notes. Tommy Lucchese was buried at Calvary Cemetery in Queens. He'd spent 44 years as a mobster and never served significant prison time. A major feat in itself. They called him Three Finger Brown. He hated that name, but it stuck because of an industrial accident that took his thumb and forefinger when he was a teenager. For 44 years, Tommy Lucchese lived as a mobster, killed 30 men, controlled the garment district, corrupted mayors and judges, and never spent more than 13 months behind bars. He was 5'2", but he ruled New York from the shadows. While other bosses craved fame, Lucchese craved invisibility. While others made headlines, he made money. And when he died in 1967 from a brain tumor, over 1,000 people attended his funeral, including FBI agents taking notes. Carlo Gambino stood beside his casket. Politicians sent flowers. Judges paid respects. Because Tommy Lucchese understood the greatest secret of the mafia. The quieter you are, the longer you survive. And Tommy, he survived longer than almost anyone.